Hello everyone, welcome again to the How Long to Beat podcast. I'm Rick, and with me as always are Alex and Paula. How are we doing, guys?
Surviving.
Surviving. We are survivors, we are go-getters. I wish I knew the rest of the lyrics, that could be a great bit. Anyway, this week, as always, we're going to be talking about what we've beaten, what we've retired, what we've been playing. We've got a topic and a question, as always. They'll come up further down the line. And we're going to cap it off with the gaming sensation, How Long to Beat the game. What have we beaten? I haven't beaten anything this week. So, Paula, why don't you tell us what you've beaten?
I finished Color Cross Malice Unlimited, the kind of a sequel or a fantasy to the original Color Cross Malice. And, oh my god, it was one hell of a roller coaster. Like, how it's structured in a way is that, okay, right from the menu, you can start like a new adventure and then you pick up like, from one of the, 5 best endings of sorts from the original game. But also, there's a fictional route to it, where things go a little bit too dark for my taste, but in a way, it was also refreshing in a way from a visual novel point of view, because I kind of got to know a big part of the cast that you don't really get to talk to in the original game, but these people are still quite important to the overall plot. I just don't want to spoil much here, but for any fan of the original Color Cross Malice Unlimited, it's just awesome.
So is it canon? Because I remember you saying it was like a fan disc. Is it all like guide and what if stuff, or is it a proper continuation?
It is a proper continuation, but it has like a lot of more I want to say it's a lot more focused on like, fan service and stuff. But also, and this was something I didn't expect seeing. Like, you ever like, seen something in a game and you think like, oh, this reminds me of a puzzle. Well, it turns out that there was like this, letter, and it ended up being like a super complex puzzle. And I was like, okay, I saw nothing like this in the original game. I'm digging this. And there was like, one other, instance where there was like this, really, really hard puzzle. And I kind of wish that the original game had more of that. Because,
More gameplay.
it was done in a way that you really feel smart. Like,
You're throwing that reel out there, Rick. Like, oh, you want your
I
game?
wasn't getting a bite. I'll get one eventually. I want some more game in my game.
That's fair.
yeah, but what I did is just lend pretty well to the game.
Yeah, it's, I do feel like visual novels walk this like super fine line, right? Where it's like, you want more gameplay, but then you also don't want it to be gimmicky. So it's like you've got this kind of like, it sounds like this one did it really well though, huh?
Yeah, because like, usually like, visual novels, there's like, I don't know, like the quick time event from the original game. There are other games that have like a mini game that allow you to get points and get like extra stuff, or you go through extra scenarios to get points to unlock the main scenarios. There's like a lot of stuff like that, but like in the case of I guess what it's pretty much a murder mystery or like overall like mystery, like in Color Cross Malice. Any kind of doing puzzles and stuff would have been like, it was surprisingly a pretty good fit on Unlimited.
Cool. Nice. Well, there you go. Color X Malice Unlimited. Sounds like an interesting adventure. I also
It's limited.
What?
If limited.
If limited. Rick loves the visual novels.
I love the visual novels and I love the dad jokes. To be fair, before you move on, I feel like I won't find an excuse to talk about it every week, but this is a line that 13 Sentinels sort of nails the path of. Well, it does, because they're not quote unquote visual novels, but it is the narrative segment, and you have the battles, and you as a player are both given complete agency as to when you do which. Right. But there are also sort of gates where you can maybe only move to the next set of battles which you've completed 4 people's stories halfway through, and then vice versa. You can't complete someone's story until you've beaten X wave of the battle, and so it keeps them both engaged and interesting.
We'll have to do we'll have to do a how long to beat podcast lottery where it's like, how many minutes until Rick mentions 13 Sentinels?
Do a sweepstake every week. I'd be about that.
Who wins? Although if we knew, that would probably we might have some
I'll enlist someone else in the forum. We'll hook it up.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I've been rocking Game Pass the last week or so. I've just been playing a wild amount of games there, and I beat the Outer Wilds, not Outer Worlds.
No pun intended.
But the Outer Wilds, which I'll admit confused me for a long time. I know it seems like an obvious thing, but no, it really did confuse me for quite a while. But Outer Wilds is very different from Outer Worlds. I don't want to spoil much, so like, if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, you might want to like skip a little bit. But I'm only going to talk about like really minor opening, like very very beginning stuff here. But the game it's a puzzle game, really, where you're unlocking this mystery. And its main mechanic is, and I kind of have to talk about this, but you discover it within the first like 5 minutes or so of playing the game. There's a time loop mechanic, which is both excellent and deeply frustrating. So the reality is that the world is persistent, right? So like every loop, the world stays the same. Which is really fascinating. So really, there are no barriers to discovery in this game except for your knowledge of the game. So as you play through it, you're simply learning about the world and how to use things that are always there from the start. So it's actually really clever game design in the sense that you're never upgrading or anything. You're simply upgrading your knowledge. And so there's a way that your knowledge is accumulated in the game. So it's not just your like own knowledge; it's like actual knowledge that you can keep track of within the game's systems. And then you have to interpret that to figure out how to do certain things. Theoretically, that's awesome, and most of the time it is. But there are some extremely convoluted, like point-and-click adventure style almost solutions to some things that I'll admit were a little frustrating, and also because you have to like wait for the right moment, because again, it's on a time loop, so like sometimes a puzzle has to happen at a certain time, and so you're just like, I'm dead, I gotta go. And you can fly all throughout this universe, which is really cool. You have a spaceship and you can fly around and you go to all these different places. So like I really really recommend people play this game. Like I do think it's really worth playing, and it's quite enjoyable. And I don't know, I see people saying like, oh, you gotta beat this without a guide, man. And I'm just like, if you have the time to beat your head against a wall for like 40 hours, then yeah, don't play this game with a guide. If you want to have fun, start by playing this game without a guide. Collect as much information as humanly possible until you hit a sticking point. Then just look up a little hint. That's all you often need, right? So like that's kind of what I did, was like I played it until I got to a point where I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do now? And all I needed was like just a little line of a hint. And then it was like, oh, it unlocked a bunch of other stuff. You know what I mean? And so like, I don't know, personally, that made it really, really enjoyable for me. But yeah, I don't recommend when people say like, oh yeah, if you don't play with a guy, you're missing out on the experience. I'm just like, don't be a snob on how to play a game. Like, just enjoy the game. You know what I mean? If you can do that, sweet, all the power to you. But otherwise, try it out, because I do think it offers a unique experience that not a lot of games offer, or not a lot of games offer well. I will admit there were multiple times as I played it where I just went, wow. So it's one of those kind of games. Has anyone played it before or tried it?
haven't played it, but I have been keeping an eye on it. It's one that I intended sort of to pick up eventually on sale. The impression I got looking in from the outside seems to pretty well match with what you're saying, which is it's a really cool concept. Doesn't entirely stick the landing. Probably could have used a better hint system. And I feel like it's something that conventional point of click, particularly either the newer ones or the old ones that have been remastered, the one that springs to mind is the Broken Sword remake that they did, have nailed this thing where you've got a stacked hint system going from the most obtuse thing that might click a synapse all the way through to basically telling you what button to press when and where and how and why.
Yeah, see, that would have been nice, because like the reality is, like, and I don't want to mislead some people, like, this isn't point and click in the sense, like, it is a first person adventure, but it has those elements like you're saying, and that Broken Sword hint system sounds pretty great. You know, I also think it has a shite map system, because you're going to all these worlds. Yeah, you're going to all these worlds, and you can't map the worlds, you know? You can't map them at all. So you just, like, you have to remember where everything is, which is cool and great, right? But it does kind of, like, I don't know. It just gets to the point where you're like, okay, thanks, I have to remember where every little step and how to get there. But it actually, what it ends up doing, and this is what I find interesting, is that it actually, in some ways, discourages the act of curiosity, which is its main goal, because you know that you don't have a map, so you know that you have to repeat a route that you take over and over and over again so that it is muscle memory and that you can do it without forgetting, right? So in a lot of ways, it's like you don't want to deviate because you're like, man, if I deviate for a second, I'm going to forget how to get to that thing that I have to do. So you're like, I just can't. I have to just go this way. So that's one of my critiques. Again, though, I'm always critical of games. I think that's just how I always land on that critical side, but like I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Okay, so that's overall positive.
Yes, absolutely.
I was kind of thinking like, it sounds like the kind of game like you want to give your full attention, because if you take a week, like a little break or go in a hiatus for a couple of weeks, it sounds like going back to it would be a nightmare.
Yeah, you cannot take a break from this game. You have to play this game, you have to play it through, and you have to be paying full attention. That is 100% correct, yeah. Which is actually a bonus to it, I have to say. Like, the fact that it's not like, oh yeah, just come whenever you want. I'm like, I kind of like that it's like, no man, play this game. Enjoy the experience. Goodbye. But yeah.
You've gone, fuck you, start from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly, right? Nice.
Why don't we keep this train rolling? Do you want to just go straight onto what you've retired, Alex, and then we'll loop back round?
Sounds good. Yeah, let's talk about what I've retired this week. So I retired a game that's not bad at all. It's just because of Game Pass. I saw SSX 2012 was on through EA Play, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get tricky. And I played that game so much when I was in college. Like, I almost 100%ed that game, which is actually a bit of a feat because there's a lot of stuff in it, and I played it like religiously. And so I just popped it on, and I was like, I wonder how it plays, and oh, it's still great. It's totally bonkers. Like, you're doing these crazy things. You have like glider suits and like ice picks and stuff when going down to like carve ice mountains, and like it's Tony Hawk if Tony Hawk was constantly downhill and going like 100 miles per hour. The sense of velocity.
That is the game.
Yeah,
the Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam. That is a thing.
Yeah, which I heard is
sorry,
not
I didn't mean to derail you.
Yeah. But see, this is the issue, right? Is that like I think those types of games don't always work very well. I'm going to talk more about skateboarding later, obviously, but snowboarding games are so excellent because mountains are mountains is a natural setting, right? And like it just has these natural valleys and crazy things you can do. But I don't know. In terms of, I've never experienced a game that has such a breathtaking sense of like speed to it, but also you feel like you're in control, and that's really cool. I don't know, I just love it. I think this game splits fans because I'll admit it's stupid. It's very stupid. Their story mode is maybe the dumbest and like most 2000 like early 2010s you'll ever see. it's like you know, comic book style, and they're like, this is, you know, I don't even know, Zoe Hardcore, and she likes to go motocross, you know, like that kind of thing. It's so dumb. But it's very fun. I just retired it because I was like, I got my fill. I've already beaten this game like twice, and I'm just like, I'm good. Have either of you played any SSX games?
Closest I've ever come was a really weird DS game called Snowboard Kids, and it was like a remake of an N64 thing. What I didn't realise going in is it was trying to be Mario Kart but downhill, but they completely domed like the balance of the power-ups. It was just non-existent. So I don't even think I finished a full race. It was just like, nope. Especially because it fetches a surprisingly good price, so I think I ended up turning a small profit on it anyway. But one of those things.
What about you, Paula?
No. Not really.
I don't play many sports games, but that's the one I will play.
What have you played and stopped playing, Paula? What have you retired this week? Because I want to hear your full-throated support of my hot take.
I don't want. I mean, I don't know if you want me to support you or burn in hell with you.
Take your pick.
Or both. Because I retired Super Mario World, which was supposed to be like the game of the month for the forums. And the thing is that I've played and completed older Super Mario games, but for some reason, this one just doesn't hook me up. Like, I actually tried to play it like for half an hour, maybe an hour. And initially, like, the controls were just stupid.
Were you playing it on the Switch?
Yeah, I was playing it on the Switch, and I have to remove a couple of buttons, so it would be like, I guess, easier to hold the controller, because I was playing on the Switch Lite, and I really felt that game, like the controller scheme that had on the Switch was made for a lobster or something, because I had to hold it like really uncomfortable. After fixing that and giving it like another chance, I just couldn't like get into it, because it was like maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but I feel like the physics system was a little bit different from the original Super Mario and Super Mario Bros. 2.
Oh, it is.
I somehow felt like you had ice on your feet all the time. So it ended up making like the actual platforming really, really frustrating. I was like, okay, I'm not really in the mood for this. I'm sorry, I'm retiring this game.
I can hear poor Tiamat crying.
I am sorry, Tiamat, but this game is just not for me. Like,
oops, sorry, go ahead.
Somebody.
What?
We all started talking at the same time.
And then all stopped at the same time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, look, I've picked up this game and I've started and stopped it maybe 300 times. Like, I always get past that first little section, that island, and then I'm just like, meh. I have beaten it twice, but I understand what you guys are saying. Like, it, you know, I don't know. It was revolutionary at its time, but even Nintendo themselves have outdone this game many times over at this point, you know?
Oh, we're all sticking the knife in now, aren't we? Outdone Super Mario World. Oh,
but I mean, that's a good thing,
this
right?
is how the...
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, each in our own way, we're having a dig. The interesting thing is, I've been thinking about it since I spoke about it last week, and I think I'd posited that maybe having played New Super Mario Bros. And gone back had coloured my view, and I think it has. But I also think, sort of touching on what you're saying, newer platformers just generally stand on the shoulders of what that game did, and it's just a much better starting point. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get onto what we're playing, because it sort of ties into one of those games. But modern platformers tend to be shorter, tighter levels. They're much better at getting you straight back in once you die. They're also a lot braver in terms of setting, in terms of giving you more of a brutal challenge, and just making it more engaging, in my opinion. And I don't think that necessarily reflects badly on the game. That's just the passage of time. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's exactly it, right? Any other thoughts, Paula, or should we move on?
I think we should move on before everyone set us on fire because of this.
It's like we don't put down the pitchforks.
Put down the pitchforks.
I will placate everybody. I've got two much less controversial retirements this week. So the first one is a launch title for the 3DS, Shinobi, which was a frustrating one. I went in cautiously optimistic because it looks really good, especially for a launch game. And while it did divide opinion, there were people who were very positive about it. Having played it and retired it inside an hour, I'm certain that those people all grew up on the original Shinobis because the design philosophies are unchanged. That game is designed as a huge middle finger to anyone who's stupid enough to buy it on launch day. It really is unkind. Literally 3 or 4 screens widths in, and you've got a range keeping. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. An enemy whose thing is keeping you at distance.
I see.
And then tucked right behind them, just below, is a ranged attacker who's impervious because the range having enemy is able to block your one ranged attack. So you basically have to tank damage. And unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty, you have 3 lives over a multi-stage level, which could take you upwards of 30 minutes to play. And if you run out of all those lives, you're right back at the beginning.
Oh.
So I tried it twice on normal, then once on easy, beat the first level on easy, decided that I didn't want to do that to myself anymore. Which was a shame because it is designed quite well. And from a basic moveset thing, it actually plays quite well. It's just not set up to let you use those tools in a fun way. So that was a shame. The other one, slightly less of a shame, is MadWorld for the Wii. And the interesting thing, having sort of gotten the Wii back out and gone back to it, is just how many great games there are where their biggest or most prominent problems are that they're on the Wii. And not to knock the Wii, because the Wii's a great system with some great games, and it did some interesting things on micro and macro levels, but this has all the tenets. There's no over-reliance on waggle to make up for the fact that you don't have buttons or enough buttons. You're missing a second analog stick, so you have no camera control. One of the things that killed the Dreamcast 8 years ago, and Nintendo didn't learn from it. Nunchucks, I forgot could shake. I now know because that's how your dodge was functioned. And there's a real problem, not necessarily with putting actions on shake commands. Mario Galaxy nailed it with the waggle spin jump thing because it wasn't necessarily timing sensitive. You could only dodge in one direction. So combine the lack of proper sort of sensitivity for the input with the very singular dodge movement, with camera control that literally isn't there, with enemies that don't respect the fact that you can't look anything outside of like a 100-degree FOV, and it just doesn't work. It becomes quite frustrating, and it's a testament to the game that in spite of it, I actually had quite a good time from what I played. It nails the graphics. I think I spoke a couple of weeks ago about how they really killed the Sin City black and white with red blood batter vibes. It's got a real sense of charm about it, about the way it's structured, the way that it encourages you to chain different violent things together and aim for sort of a score combo. It's really lovingly put together, and having played a little bit of God Hand, which is a former Clover game before a lot of that staff became Platinum and made, among other things, MadWorld, you can really see that it's a continuation of some of those tenets, but it swaps a lot of the complexity in that combat system for a style and a very specific, I want to say playstyle, but I don't want to repeat the word style, but playstyle, and a focus on bringing out what the Wii does. And there are times when it nails it. Like, there's a finishing move for one of the bosses where you're doing stuff with the nunchuck and the Wiimote, and then you're prompted to pull them both apart. I pulled my nunchuck out. I'm normally quite restrained, but I didn't went for it. It had the ability to really pull you into it. But I got about 60% of the way through the story, and it got to the point where I felt like I'd had my fill, as it were. So I'll go and seek out the rest of the cutscenes on YouTube eventually, but I won't feel any sorrow for not having fought through it.
That's fair. Would you say it's kind of like a game that's like worth trying out?
For how cheap you can get it, 100%. 100%. I don't know about America. I suspect it to be a similar situation. I paid £1 for the game, which is like 80 cents American.
Yeah, Wii games are cheap here.
Specific ones are for sure, because they sold gangbusters. To be fair, I don't know that MadWorld did specifically. I think it did pretty awfully in that when you juxtapose the Wii audience with MadWorld's theme and setting and violent tone is understandable. I also understand why they maybe thought maybe the dads will buy it and sort of buy it, like play it when the kids are asleep. If I remember rightly, I don't think that worked out for them. But there are enough discs out there and enough Wiis out there that, it's just super cheap.
Realistically, dads are playing the Xbox 360. Like, that's just, you know what I mean? Like, the Wii era was the era of the Wii and the 360. At least in America.
You heard it here first. Dads play Xbox.
It's just what it is, you know? Nice. Should we move on to what we're playing?
Yeah. Shall I just roll on? Should we segue this back around again?
Yeah, why not? Why don't you tell us? What are you playing, Rick?
Sweet. So I've got 5 games on the go, 2 of which are the same as before. So I'm still playing Blasphemous on PC. I think I like it a bit more than you do.
Okay.
So far, Alex. Once I got over the fact that it isn't actually a Metroidvania and it's just like a 2D action game, I found myself more and more enjoying it. And enjoying the challenge, because it is quite a difficult game, even from the early sections I found. I'm playing Bravely Default on 3DS. I can see myself... Mild spoilers for Bravely Default. There are 2 endings, one of which you can get around the halfway point. Paula's nodding because she's knowing the pain that I'm currently experiencing, I think.
Oh, you're there. You're there.
I'm there. I'm literally just there. So I've just beaten the boss battle that leads into Chapter 5, which is where there really begins. So there's the true ending, which requires a fuck ton of recycled content to be churned through. And there's like the B ending, which you can sort of cheese at any point past the halfway point. Really... And I understand why they do what they do from a narrative perspective, because the narrative's been spoiled for me. My brother played it years ago. From a gameplay perspective, the narrative doesn't do enough to justify the sheer amount of bullshit that you're expected to do to get it. So I'm definitely going to get like the cheese ending. I've got to go a bit further to get the last job, and then I'm going to get the cheese ending. Whether I then go and do the true ending, whether that's now or in like 6 months' time when I can stomach doing all of the game again, I will see. But that's on the go, and it's a shame because the core game is excellent, but I won't delve too much into that. I'm still playing Control, so I'm still doing the jukebox missions on that, and then 2 new games. The first one is. What are you giggling
Sorry,
at?
I just saw this and I was like, "What?" But it's okay.
And you know what?
Go ahead.
Rabbids Go Home, the Nintendo Wii, stands up.
The
If
Rabbids
you know what
games
you're
are
going in
surprisingly good, honestly.
I haven't played any of them before. This is another one where I've pilfered it from my brother's collection. It is stupid, dumb, light popcorn gaming fun. That sort of rhymes, and that wasn't what I was aiming for, but we'll go with it. There's like 4 inputs, but it knows that it's simple, and it plays into the simplicity. Mm-hmm. The sense of humor is lovely. Like right from the off, you're playing as a rabbit in like cargo pants in a supermarket trolley, being pushed along by a rabbit in a pink lacy thong. It just doesn't have any hesitation in going there, but in a really whimsical and fun way. And the gameplay so far is quite fun as well. So I could see this being another one where I get halfway through and say, I've had enough of this. I've had a good time. I don't need to finish it. I could also see myself finishing it. It's a really better than it has any right to be 7 out of 10 so far.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of the Mario and Rabbids games. That game is awesome. Mario and Rabbids, the
Oh yeah,
Kingdom Battle.
The
game?
XCOM
Kingdom
rip-off.
Battle.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of those ones where like Rabbids are weird, you know? Like I always think, oh, Rabbids are dumb, but then I play a Rabbids game and I go, these guys are kind of actually they're kind of funny, and I never expect to laugh at them.
They're like the Fall Guys beans. They're just so plain that you can sort of put them in anything or put anything with them, which is a pro, or as can be seen in the case of the Minions, a really, really terrible con.
Yeah, it's so funny, like where the Minions are sort of like too much, the Rabbids seem to be like they seem to just hit that just right, because I also think they're not over marketed, which is what's really helped, right? They're utilized where they should be, and then they're left alone. Sorry, so what was the last one you were playing?
Well, the last one, and this ties back into the Super Mario World chatter, is Super Meat Boy on the PlayStation Vita, which has to be the perfect place to play that game because it's wonderful. It's basically replaced Ultimate NES Remix as my 5-minute downtime game, and I love it for that. And in terms of the contrast with Super Mario World, getting back into that game after a death took as long as maybe half of the levels of Super Meat Boy take on a successful run. And the thing with Super Meat Boy, not only is it willing to get you straight back in, I mean, that's advancements in technology in part, but not only does it get you straight back in when it's done, but it's willing, by extension, to push you that much harder because it knows it can get you straight back in. And I've just found it a much more enjoyable experience to just keep slamming my head against that wall for whatever reason. It's just a really well put together game, and I'm having a blast with it so far.
Nice. Paula, do you want to talk about what you're playing next?
Oh yeah.
I think we're playing a game together.
So after retiring Super Mario World, I was just scrolling through the NSO library. I saw a Picross game. Super Mario Picross, in fact. And it is addicting. So I ended up playing like an hour before going to bed after retiring the other game. Which got me out of my grumble, why can't I like this game mood? I mean, it is Picross, but Picross is sort of fun, and like the whole like interface and like the kind of aesthetics they went for in the game are kind of satisfying in a way.
Yeah, they've got this like chiseled like stone tablet sort of thing where it like looks like you're chiseling out and like carving a tablet to make it, and like I just love that. And Rick was laughing at us because, you know, little known fact, Paul and I are like such weebs that we can read Japanese. And I just wrote down, and I just really want to say this name because it's very fun. Mario no Super Picross. And that's how you say it in Japanese, which
is understandable verbally, but when you type it on a agenda document, has me reeling.
Yeah, in katakana, he's like, "What does this mean?" Weirdly enough, so I thought it was Super Mario Picross 2, but for some reason they called it Mario's Super Picross, which seems weird to me. Like I was like, why wouldn't you just call it Super Mario's Picross? But I guess it's Mario's Super Picross, but it's just Picross. I don't know. Man, Nintendo's naming systems.
It's Super Picross for the Super Nintendo.
I guess so.
But wait, what's the Super Famicom there? Oh yeah,
yes,
it has Super in the name.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah,
Super,
it's still Super.
Right. But also
Super
it's like
something.
Let's be honest here too. Mario has nothing to do with this game. Like there aren't even really any like Mario puzzles. Maybe they come later or something. There's not many. It's basically just Mario goes like, "Congratulations, you have solved puzzles," and then like moves you on to the next one. It's sort of weird that way.
Yep.
But actually, that is a good point to note too. It is all in Japanese, which isn't a big deal, because there's actually not that much of the interface that you need to like really pay attention to. But you might not understand what Mario's telling you at some point, so don't bother playing the tutorial because it is fully in Japanese. Just, you know, go in and have some Picross fun.
What I think we're knowing a bit of Japanese and like the characters and stuff may help is because like some of the early ones are Japanese characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Oh, sorry.
but overall, you don't really need Japanese to enjoy the game.
Yeah, you will be confused sometimes because when you complete a puzzle, it'll tell you what it is, but it'll tell you in Japanese. So most of the puzzles are pretty obvious what the picture is, but there's a couple where even I was like, dude, what? Like, I had to like look at the Japanese and like look it up and go, oh, that's what that picture is.
I have a question for you both. So, you might not be aware, but at the moment, all of the Picross games on the 3DS are 50% off with a touch interface in English. Is there anything about Mario Super Picross, whatever, that that you think makes it worth playing over a modern Picross game?
I don't know if it's like worth playing. Well, actually, yeah, the interface is one of the most satisfying I've ever experienced. It's so like chunky and beautiful and artistic. I don't think it's worth playing over it. It's just different. I also have to say, and this is gonna be like a little hot take, but I tried playing the Pokemon Picross that we talked about, and I actually think Picross is worse with touch controls, because the issue is that when you're using it without, you actually just hit one button to mark one as like filled in, another button to mark it as an like X'd, and then the same buttons on those ones will like remove that mark, which is really quick and it's really easy. When you do it on the 3DS, you often have to like hold up a button or you have to switch what type of input you want to put in, and it's not intuitive, and I actually find that it's slower, and that might just be because of what I'm used to, but like you can just like when I'm on the Switch Lite and I'm going through, like I play the modern Picrosses as well, they're also on sale on the Switch. I blaze through those puzzles, like it's just like, and that's more of like having played Picross now too much. It's just a personal thing. I would imagine if you started playing Picross on the 3DS, that's probably going to be your comfort zone, but I do think it's slightly easier to play on the Switch.
Yeah, I feel like just using the buttons that like of the touchscreen is not only more comfortable for me, but it's more like precise, because there are Picross games that if you make a mistake, they take time away from you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I tend to disagree, but then I don't play nearly as much Picross as either of you, I think, so that's maybe part of it. Sorry, crack on, Paula.
Yeah, what else, Bella?
So I started playing, I hope I am not murdering Piofiore, Faded Memories for the Nintendo Switch, one of the other games I was playing. This one has to do with the Italian mafia, and the setting is that you play Liliana, who was raised like as an orphan in a church, and in this city called Furlone, there's like 3 mafia groups that rule over a section of the city each, and well, there's a lot happening behind the scenes, so it seems like there's gonna be like fights between the various groups of the mafia. I still don't know, like, I still don't have the full picture because I just went through one of the routes, and then I'm currently on chapter 7 of the second route, and I'm still confused on a lot of the stuff that it is happening here, because like on these kind of visual novels you usually go like through all separate routes, and then you have like one big route that joins all this stuff together. And so far I have like maybe 2 of the 5 pieces. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? Why am I involved in this?
What's the gameplay like? Is there any gameplay?
No, it is just classical pure visual novel, though there's this fun thing where if you make certain choices, at sometimes, like during the main story, you get like a little prompt that there's like a side, it is like maybe a 10-minute scene, like going like right at the same time as you're doing this other thing. And you can choose like to view it. And I think if you view like all the different scenes, you get like, I don't know, points or something like that for the main ending. But it's like pretty like unintrusive in a way. Like you can choose not to watch some of these scenes if you're like going through multiple walkthroughs.
Cool. And
finally, the big one.
yeah, the big one.
The big one. I've been playing this for already like 20 hours. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Oh my god, I am sorry, but this took all my attention because it wasn't supposed to arrive until yesterday. But it arrived like on launch day. So
I'm
Friday.
not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Oh no. Hey, no, for this, my desk broke and I didn't have like a proper setup until the other night.
Well,
So
hearing excuses.
I couldn't plug in my PlayStation 4.
Of course,
Ignore me.
Rick is talking about 13 Sentinels. But anyway, let's get for those who aren't in the loop. But okay, so you've been playing it. How's the experience so far? 20 hours, like holy smokes, yeah. You've been going on it.
Yeah, so far, I currently unlocked chapter 6. I think there are like 8 chapters like on the main story.
Okay.
And oh my god, it has been an experience because like first of all, like the Warriors games tend to be like just smash buttons until you win. But I feel like compared to Fireman Warriors and the original Hyrule Warriors, it has like more of a strategy to it on what to use. Because like you have like the main moveset of your warrior, but then you also have the Chica's Light runes, which by the way, each character uses them like in a different way, and those are mapped to another set of buttons, and also they have a timer on them, so you can't spam them. You have to use them either when you think it is the right time to use it, or when
On a cooldown.
or to gain an advantage over an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you have the elemental rods, and some enemies will be either weak or immune to those rods. And there are like certain situations, like for example, if you use ice or electricity over water. If you use ice, you will freeze the enemies around the impact zone. And if you use electricity, you get the chance like to stun them and to get some extra hits.
Okay, right.
Elemental rods have to be recharged by beating elemental enemies.
Okay.
But then again, since some challenge missions are timed, you have to see in which order you defeat the enemies to make it like in time. And I found that to be like super fun. I think 7 are like the characters everyone knows they're in the game. So far I have 13 characters. One of each is completely optional to unlock. One of the other was a really nice surprise because I was like, maybe it is playable, and oh my god, it is crazy. All the movesets are really crazy and are very different between each other, by the way. So depending on the time of, depending on how you want to play, I'm sure there's something there for you. And Link has like 3 different movesets, like with a one-handed weapon and a shield. That is like the default. Then the two-handed weapon, and it is kind of like a berserker / suicidal moveset, because to make like really strong attacks, you have to sacrifice health, and I found that to be very interesting. But you can like eat whatever you found on the way to regain that health, but you have like a limited amount of time to regain it.
Damn. Okay. Sounds like you're
Then
getting
you have.
it hard.
I am sorry, but
No.
like it has been like super fun so far, and even though some people may have some problems with a specific part of the game, I'm just really digging this.
Nice. No, it's good. You're the only one of us keeping current, so that's good. For everybody who's like, who's been curious about this game, it's nice to hear about it, because I know, like Rick and I both talked, we're not like big Muso game fans, but this is probably the one that, if it goes on sale eventually, like I will probably dip in to try this, because I tried Fire Emblem Warriors and I was just like, okay, and I didn't love it, but it does look neat. The Breath of the Wild thing, I mean, it does sell me a little, you know, like I'm like, that is kind of cool. Nice.
No, I think I'll swerve it irrespective. But then I haven't played Breath of the Wild properly yet, so maybe that would change my mind.
You have to play Breath of the Wild, right?
Wow. When you finish 13 Sentinels, I'll buy a Switch.
Okay, it seems that I have to finish it before Christmas or something.
There you go. Yeah, now she's got incentive. I'll talk
Now
a little bit about what I've been playing. I was also, you talked about Picross. Like I said, I have been Game Passing, and I'm playing Tell Me Why right now, which every time I've been playing this with my partner a bit, I'll be like, oh, you want to play some Tell Me Why? And just without fail, she goes, tell me why.
Nothing but a heartbreak. Yep.
And I'm just like, okay. Good game. The one thing I have to say, so it's in the vein of, you know, like Life is Strange and Telltale games, like it's in that vein. So far the story is intriguing. A really unique setting. It's in Alaska. I think so. I don't want to spoil anything. If you're worried, you can like go away. One of the themes that it deals with is something that actually some of the thematic, or like the way that the story goes, are things that I'm quite aware of and like enmeshed in those sort of cultures, I guess you could say. And so sometimes I feel like the game feels really heavy-handed in its messaging. But then I'm also not sure if that's actually just them trying to be clear about what's happening for those who maybe are not initiated into like the kind of world and vocabulary of this sort of topic. So, you know, it's that weird thing of where you're like, I'm actually not sure, because maybe I'm just more well versed and I'm not in this too far yet. So it feels a little like, yeah, no, I know, I got it, I got the subtlety. But maybe they're worried that the subtlety will actually be lost on people. So I'm not really sure yet. I'm not super far into it. I'm only like an hour and a half maybe. And I'm really not sure where the story's going, which is a point to it. Like I'm genuinely kind of like, where are we going with this? So yeah,
Tell me where.
Yeah, tell me where. Tell me where. So I am interested so far, is what I will say. I'm also started playing Mirror's Edge Catalyst, the one after your recommendation, because it's on Game Pass, and I really like it. Even with I'm not far at all, but what I played was satisfying. It's also, man, I gotta say, I have the Elite controller too with the paddles, and just like having those paddles and never having to touch the face buttons is kind of incredible. Like you're just going, and it's like I could just smack to like punch a guy. It's just like pressing with my ring finger, and it's just like it's really helps the fluidity of the game, which is awesome. The last one I want to talk about is just I am having fun, and that's I bought on sale Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, the remake. Oh, I love this game. This game is so good. Little known fact, I was a little skater growing up. Like that was just my thing. Like me and the guys in my neighborhood, we just skateboarded all the time and like pulling tricks. And Tony Hawk was like the thing. You didn't grow up without playing Tony Hawk. And I actually grew up starting with Tony Hawk's Underground, which is a bit controversial because that's when they started letting you get off your board and stuff. But I loved that game so much. And playing this game, like I still longboard and stuff, but unfortunately my days of pulling popping ollies and doing kickflips and stuff are kind of long past me now. But I'll still longboard everywhere, except in the winter now. But this game is such an excellent example of how to remake a game. Because what they've done is they've taken all of the advancements from the Tony Hawk games since 1 and 2 were created, and they have taken everything that is good and excellent, and they have put it into one remaster of this game. It is not Tony Hawk 1 and 2. This is not the same controls that you were used to back then. I mean, it is to a degree, but it is the optimized controls. And everything feels perfect. It is not an easy game. When you start, you won't feel like you're very good, but honestly, every time you play it, you just feel like you're getting better and better, and you're pulling off better tricks, and you're learning how to use your board better, and how to get up higher, and how to pull off more complicated combos. And like genuinely, I started being like, "Oh, I'm terrible," and then like after a couple days now of like playing with a few sessions, I'm just like, "Man, I can pull off these like sick, intense long combos. I know how to like get up anywhere. I can like wall run so nicely." It's a masterful game. It truly is a masterfully designed game. And like you have all these levels, and you have 2 minutes to play each level. And they give you a list of goals and objectives, and you can tackle them in any order you want. And you have 2 minutes to do it. And then when you want to retry the level, it like loads you back into it almost immediately. The Create a Skater is so much fun. It's all so good. I highly recommend it. Like, if people don't play sport games and stuff, like, I'm like, play Tony Hawk. You're going to have so much fun. It's just, it's a distillation of what makes games great. It is 100% gameplay focused. That is the sole focus of this thing, is gameplay, and a killer soundtrack, by the way. It's like all
iconic.
Iconic, for sure. And I don't know. It's just like when you play, I enter into that Zen mode, you know, that like flow state with gaming, where at a certain point you're just like, whoa, and you pull off these insane moves, and then you're just like, whoa, what happened? So anyway, that's my Tony Hawk rant. Play Tony Hawk.
It tickles me how much of what you said about Tony Hawk I could apply to like my experience with Mirror's Edge.
Yeah, no,
given that you've said one after the other.
Mm-hmm. I actually think those two have kind of a there's a real big similarity actually in a lot of ways to those games. So anyway, that's what we've been playing. We went off, didn't we? Let's go to our big topic of the week, which, to placate poor sad Rick, we're going to talk about the death of dedicated handhelds and the rise of the Switch.
That's not quite placating me.
No, but
not quite placating. Talking about the storied history of the mighty handheld.
Exactly, yes. Hey, look, I love handhelds too. But what I thought I'd do first, so I did some research, and look, I'm going to put a disclaimer here. We're not gaming historians. We are enthusiasts. But I did my best. So if people are like, actually, the Game Boy was really, just let me know in the comments, and I will respectfully take your opinions on this, or your facts. This sounds really sarcastic now, I realize. I've set this up terribly, because I actually do like it when people like fill me in on interesting information that they know. But this is just to say I might make a mistake. So anyway, in a lot of the research that we've done, gaming's not very old, really. It's a pretty new medium. And some things like talk about handheld starting in like 1976. Some say even earlier, but I think most people agree that 1979 is kind of like the start of handhelds as its own sort of thing. And I found one, the MB Microvision, which is the first use of cartridges. And it was really neat because it had these swappable covers. So it was kind of like, with Atari systems where you would put an overlay onto your TV to be like graphics. That's kind of what that was like as well. And it was obviously monochrome, and that came out in 79, which then led the way for the Game & Watch, which I'm sure many people have heard. There's that old, anecdotal story, but it was made by Gunpei Yokoi in 1980. And so this was kind of the rise of the LCD screen. And what I really like about this is that like the Game & Watch was the start of Nintendo's, and Yokoi kind of coined this term, this idea of lateral thinking with matured technologies. So he would like look and he'd say like, what is current technology that we have that is cheap now to use, and how can we use it in like a really innovative way that is really fun? And so obviously he'd go on to do that with the Game Boy later, but he started that with the Game & Watch. And the Game & Watch is also the invention of the D-pad as we know it, which is pretty cool, right? They had the Donkey Kong game, and also their Donkey Kong game is really reminiscent of the DS clamshell because they actually had the 2-screen system. So you can see a lot like Nintendo never just abandons something, right? Like good ideas are used and then are
except
reinvented.
the Virtual Boy. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah,
but not even really. The Virtual Boy's in Luigi's Mansion 3. It's
and
like,
I suppose technically the 3DS when I'm not being sarcastic.
Yeah, but exactly, right? They never fully abandon things. But unless it's terrible, then yeah, they will. But yeah, the Game & Watch could only hold one game each, right? It was just you bought the game and that was it. And then we come up to, and obviously there were many other handhelds in between, but I think obviously the next big revolutionary moment was the Game Boy in 1989. And again, that was Yokoi. And that changed everything, right? I mean, at this point, you had 4 shades of gray or green, depending on what you had. And there's actually, I want to plug this. There's this channel that I like called Modern Vintage Gamer, and he has a video called How Graphics Worked on the Nintendo Game Boy. And I really recommend people check that out. It's really fascinating look at how developers maximized the Game Boy because that thing's nuts. There was not much space on that thing, and the fact that people made the games that they did with it is incredible. So anyway, that's kind of like the little brief, because I think from talking, Rick, Paula, and I, like our experiences with handhelds, I think at the earliest start maybe with the Game Boy Color. Like that's my entry into things. Rick, yeah, you're nodding too, and I know Paula, you're a bit later.
Yeah,
but I figured
we basically 1, 2, 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I remember my brother playing like on a Game Boy, but since I was like too little at the time, he would never like let it. I knew that it existed and that it played games at the time. I just wasn't allowed to touch it because, probably because for a good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I got a Game Boy Color with Pokemon Red. That was like my first thing that I owned, but I was lucky because I had a family friend who actually gave me just a stack of Game Boy games that he had. Like it was like Yoshi, it was Blades of Steel, like X-Men, and Spider-Man, like a whole bunch of these Game Boy games, and he just gave them. He was like, "Have them, man," which was pretty awesome. But then yeah, so we know too, like there's Game Boy Color, and then we moved to the Game Boy Advance, the DS, and then the 3DS, and of course we had the PSP and the Vita in there. And there were other consoles. You know, there's the Sega Game Gear. There's a whole bunch of stuff. The Lynx, yeah, Atari Lynx. There's a whole bunch of things in there. But really, I think for most people, Nintendo has dominated the handheld world. And then Sony came up for this kind of nice period of time and really like did some revolutionary things in there as well. Yeah, I mentioned I had a Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance SP, a DS. I think I had a DS Lite, and then a 3DS and a Vita for a period of time. Had a lot.
Yeah, it's before we sort of crack onto those things, there's probably an interesting point to be made in that, particularly going back to what you said about lateral thinking with mature technology, or to put it simply, cool shit with cheap shit. So there's an argument to be made that what makes handheld gaming successful or unsuccessful, from the Game Boy versus the Lynxes and the Game Gears, all the way up to the 3DS versus the Vita, is knowing the happy medium that you need to hit. So in terms of what killed the Lynx and the Game Gear and various other high-powered competitors versus the Game Boy, because what you have to remember is even by 91, 92, whenever it was that the Game Boy came out, that tech was outdated then.
Yeah.
Their competitors had color screens, way more pixels, way more powerful
the Game Boy
technology.
And Lynx came out in 89.
Oh, it was 80. Holy.
Yeah, it was super early.
Yeah. And even then, that tech was super outdated. But they nailed 2 things. One, they got games on there. Lots and lots of games. And what ties into that, number 2, is that it was super cheap to develop for a Game Boy. Mm-hmm. Because, as you say, there's only so much you can do with it anyway.
Not only that, but I think like some of the other handhelds that had that came out like early and that had like these super beautiful, or like at least like colorful screens, is the battery life.
Oh yeah, they would chug like 4 AA's easy in like 3 hours.
And that ties into the price, because if you, as a parent, know that a Game Boy costs half as much on the outset and is probably going to use a third of the batteries over the course of its life, because those things took 4 batteries, but they took them for time, then you're going to be more inclined to make that purchase. And that logic extends all the way up to the Vita. As much as I love the Vita is arguably my favorite piece of gaming hardware. It was probably too powerful.
Oh, easily.
In the sense that it cost more. They put unnecessary expensive gizmos in there. Like, you can understand with the DSi that they wanted to shove a crappy camera into it, and to an extent the 3DS because they had the 3D gimmick. But 2011 era Sony, with smartphones being what they are, should have known better to think that they needed 2 cameras on the Vita. I always forget the Vita has 2 cameras.
Oh, I didn't even.
They're not good cameras.
Yikes!
It has a front and a back.
It has two.
There's a front one. I happen to have mine to hand. There's a front one right above the face buttons. Just here, I'm not sure you can see on the camera.
No.
And then there's another one right above the other
middle.
unnecessary piece of tech, the back touchpad, which is helpful for remote play, but I actively turn it off in games that use it.
Oh yeah.
It's just needless expense in something that was already expensive, and because of the hardware being as powerful as it was, I've seen the argument made, and I think it probably holds some water alongside the memory card fiasco, that it was probably too expensive to develop on. Mm-hmm. And then you have a chicken and egg scenario where, unless games are coming onto it, people aren't going to take the risk to develop. And if people aren't developing, then those games aren't there and people aren't buying. And if people aren't buying, why would you make a game for it? And on and on and on. Nintendo can always, to an extent, book that trend, because they're going to make games for their own system no matter what. And that's what ultimately saved the 3DS, along with the price cut, was Mario 3D Land, Mario Kart 7. They're various first-party things that were always going to do gangbusters.
I think you're on to something as well, in the fact that, like, when you even think about the popularity of the Game & Watch, it's a game and watch, and like, I know sometimes we discount that idea, but in reality, the utility of these devices is often what makes them so successful, right? They have to be carryable. They often require some kind of extra element to it. And when you think about it, like, yeah, sure, maybe not in the Game Boy, but think about what ended up becoming really the handheld gaming of this last 10 years, and it's mobile games, right? Suddenly, having the games on your phone, and I really think that took a huge bite into handheld gaming, because suddenly, like, when you think about it, I never refer to it this way, but I realized I actually had another handheld device, and that was the iPod Touch. That thing was a gaming handheld, right? Like, as far as I'm concerned. For kids. And in fact, it had things like Grand Theft Auto and stuff on it, you know? Like, it had games on it. Man, even my iPod Video. I remember playing Zuma and like stuff like that on it, you know, with the little wheel. I love that.
I know it. I got into iPods on the touch. I, however, always think the mobile phone games take away from dedicated gaming hardware argument is a little bit overblown. I think that's more 2 separate circles than it is a Venn diagram. I think if you're the kind of person that's going to buy that hardware, you are always going to buy that hardware, whether or not you can play games on your phone. I know that's true of me and the people in my circles.
Oh, no, for sure. But it's not so much that I'm worried that it takes away consumers. I do think, though, that it bleeds away some developers.
Sure.
Yeah, because when you think about it, there's the DS, which actually could be a good thing, because shovelware was like insane on the DS, and those are like basically mobile games. And then there seems to be less of that on the 3DS, though of course there still is, but it seems like there was less. So yeah, I don't know. I think there is an intersection there in some ways, and I'm not sure if it's a good one. As much as I don't try to shit on mobile games too much, because there are some great mobile games, but I don't know, I'm personally a little bit like, I don't like the gotcha stuff. I just
and when you talk about bleeding developers, that's where the money is, and unfortunately, particularly for bigger houses and ones that are maybe more focused on earning a living than creating something artistic, that's always going to be a draw. We are getting onto a completely different debate when we go down that road there. So just briefly in terms of where I started before we sort of go on to some of the sub stuff that we wanted to talk about within it. So I started, I think we spoke about this the other week actually, on the original Game Boy with Wave Race and Super Mario Land, which Mario Land 2 is a timeless classic to this day. Mario Land is okay, but like you can beat it in 40 minutes. It's not a long game by any stretch, even to an inexperienced child gaming set of hands and brain. But I got so much joy out of that thing, and I remember, because if you think, like, I was a 90s kid, so by the time I got my hands on the Game Boy, if it came out in 89, I had it a decade after it had released.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. And I got the Game Boy Advance more or less on launch, so you can imagine that was a mind melter. Shoulder buttons, colour screen. The cartridge is a third of the size. What? And I have so much nostalgia for that machine. I've still got my original fat model, now with a backlit screen, which I play all the time. And I've got a Game Boy Micro as well, which when we were allowed outside was great for commutes. I played through the whole of Stuntman on the bus, doing it that way, and it was perfect. But yeah, no, I think I'll always be playing handheld. It's always been my preferred way to go.
Which I have to admit,
which is ironic because given the way it's going, like I'm not on the handheld zeitgeist. I mean,
you two both have
like 2 Switches each. Yeah. Well, this is just a quirk of the timing of everything. I just got on a PS4, and as much as the Switch is dope, you have to remember for the first year and a half or so, maybe 2 of the Switch's life, most of the non-Nintendo games that would have been my go-to handheld stuff were still coming out on the Vita.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. Like, Ys 8's a great example. That came out on the Vita at least 6 months before it ever came out on the Switch. So it's not necessarily been a desperate need. When Shin Megami Tensei 5 comes out, it will be. And I'll be getting that, and Box Boy and Box Girl, and Astral Chain. Like, I've already got my shopping list for when it happens.
Nice.
Maybe the Switch Pro will be it, but
might be a good thing to wait for.
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
Rumors said 2021.
Wow.
Rumors, say every year, but yeah, 2021 does sound pretty good.
I was going to say, I swear they've been talking about the Switch Pro before the Switch even came out.
You know, there's something interesting about this. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Paula.
Oh, there are always like rumors and stuff, but I do feel like whenever the sequel to Breath of the Wild comes out, there's gonna be either like a Zelda themed Switch, but I strongly feel that whatever new Switch model Nintendo has in plans, it's gonna come out with a new Zelda game.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be stupid not to align it.
I also think it's it's a bad idea, but I mean, it's fine. But like, I just find that when Nintendo iterates on their handhelds and on their consoles, I have almost never seen it go well. The Game Boy Color worked nicely because it was mostly just like this color sort of edit, but even then there weren't actually that many fully only Game Boy Color games. And when you think about the new 3DS, that was kind of a disaster. So like the games that they released for that, like they released some like exclusive, new 3DS XL games, did not sell well. And even the 3DS, when you think about it, is an iterative design on the DS, and it definitely sold worse than the DS.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like saying the PS3 sold worse than the PS2. Like, you're never going to live up to the PS2. That's lightning in the bottle. I am a staunch defender of the new 3DS and its nipple.
I love them, but that doesn't mean they sold well.
Right. Then, if you're talking from a purely economic standpoint, that's a whole other thing. So, when you've got to think about the games that were exclusive, they were Fire Emblem Warriors, a random Musou game for a franchise that's not known for its like action combat, and Xenoblade Chronicles, which had already come out on the Wii. And
yeah, but
in fairness, go on.
I'm sorry, I would say that's kind of the point, right? Is that because it doesn't end up selling well, this is where I sort of think the economics thing plays into it. They end up getting like exclusives that don't actually end up contributing much. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like that kind of world, like, and that's what I always worry about. Is like you want to see something like the Switch, for instance, which does so well that now everyone's pouring to put their games onto it. Whereas with the new 3DS XL, it's like, well, what's the point? Like, I might as well just start developing for the Switch that's coming out, or like I might as well just not utilize its power and just keep it in the 3DS realm. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's not even a problem, but yeah.
I know what you're getting
like,
at. I just think it's the wrong approach.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Go on.
From a business standpoint, it might have like not make sense or not do well, but from a consumer standpoint, like the 3DS, the new 3DS runs a lot of the 3DS games like a lot more, like more smooth in a way. Like, because like, especially like the Pokemon games that came out like near the end of the life of 3DS. Oh my god, I can't speak. Pronounce, Paula, pronounce. So like, for example, Pokemon X and Y that were like big sellers on the 3DS had things like horror battles, like 5 Pokemon show up on the screen, and that really slowed the 3DS down.
Yeah.
But like in Pokemon Sun and Moon, it happened that the poor 3DS was running on fumes, pretty much. Because like they were trying to push the system a little bit, like which just made me salty because Pokemon Sword and Shield doesn't pull the Switch as much. But that's another topic for another day.
But honestly, like, I agree with you guys. It just makes me sad. I'm just so scared of a Wii U situation. That's literally, I'm just terrified.
I mean, that's if you think the Wii U is an iteration on the Wii, though, because I think that was a failure of them selling, and we may have a problem with Paula in a moment, because the Wii U wasn't an iteration. It was a new thing that happened to have backwards compatibility, and they just screwed up the marketing. I think it's better to consider it like the PS4 Pro, where it's not supposed to replace, and it's not supposed to have this swathe of exclusives that are going to make the poor people who bought it the first time round buy it again. It has a couple of nice things extra. It does some things better, particularly performance, and the 3D that doesn't require you to have everything in a brace to like keep it stable.
No. But does that sound like
Oh,
sorry. Does that sound like Nintendo to you though? Like Nintendo doesn't take a Sony approach. This is what I mean though. I agree with you. I think like that approach where you're like, no, it's just a nice kind of upgrade is awesome, but it's just never how they market their things. They're always like, play this with the exclusive new Nintendo 3DS, and I'm worried they're gonna have Switch Pro where they're like, play this, the only place to play Breath of the Wild 2. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't think they'll do that. They'd be crazy, but but that's just it's Nintendo. Like they think outside of the box sometimes in good and also baffling ways.
This is why the patient gamer strat is the way to go.
No, I agree with you. You're right.
As always.
I also wanted to mention, so like I know like it is sort of interesting because yeah, when the Switch came up, that was it, right? Like dedicated handhelds are poof vanished, which I think it's interesting because like, and I'd have to check to see like the sort of stats on this. Obviously, they're doing better than with the Wii U and the 3DS sales, but when you think about it, Nintendo had 2 streams of revenue, right? They had their home consoles and they had their handhelds. And like think about the Wii DS era. Oh my god, right? Like that was talk about racking in. Not that it's all about money, but you know, you always want to see these companies doing successfully so that, you know, more games can come out. And now I wonder they've consolidated those markets, right? And so what I'm actually curious about now is like they have such good sales on the Switch, but I'm wondering what that's like in relation to their other years. Because now is it a question of like, yeah, they're doing great on the Switch, but they also don't have that guy who, like I did, had a Wii and a DS. Now I just have their Switch. Then again,
and a Switch Lite.
But yeah, maybe I'm invalidating my argument because I bought a Switch Lite too. Yep. But
this is the thing, and they only had to develop one set of games because it's the same architecture.
Yeah, but it does make me wonder too, though. I don't know. I am curious, like what that's going to mean for the future.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't think from the proper, quote unquote proper, like from the big hardware manufacturers, I don't think dedicated handhelds purely are ever coming back. I think the Switch has consigned those to a deathbed. In combination, in fairness, with various remote play initiatives, Xbox are quite keen for you to take a controller around with your phone and play it that way. Ditto PlayStation and whatever their equivalent service is called. the wrinkle there is a controller is much more bulky and awkward to carry than not necessarily a Switch. That really is stretching the definition of handheld, but certainly of a Vita or a DS or a Game Boy or a PSP. Yeah. So that's tricky. But and we've got this in the show notes, so let's segue it through. There is a niche Eastern market sort of rising up to fill that need.
Yeah, China has.
So why don't you? Yeah.
Sorry, I'll pop into this because I've ordered a Retroid Pocket 2, which is in shipment limbo right now. Although I might have it by next week. Apparently, it's arrived in Canada. I ordered this at the beginning of September, and to put it this way, I got my Xbox before I got my Retroid. But what's interesting now is that so we've always known like China has always put out handhelds where like literally all the ROMs you ever wanted are already on it because China has like the craziest laws when it comes to copyright and stuff. They're just like, we don't care. But usually, I'll be honest, the construction of these things is usually sort of flimsy at best. But there's been this recent sort of push to create more almost Nintendo-like systems that have an excellent feel to them and a good build. And Retroid is one of those companies that's really pushing them. And they're filling this interesting market because, and like Rick's made a comment here too about how like the Vita in general is like better for emulation. And I'd agree. I'd almost call the Vita like the Cadillac of emulation. But the Retroids and stuff are filling this like $80 price range, which is like pretty cheap. And then also allows you to emulate pretty much everything from the N64 back. And PS1, a little bit of Dreamcast. And so, like, that sort of era of gaming has developed into these affordable handhelds that feel quite good. And so, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Like, I sort of fell for it because I was like, I do want to play PS1 games while sitting on my couch and just staring up at the TV.
Yeah, man. I mean, the wrinkle is that my argument that the Vita and PSP are a better prospect than the Retroids, which I stand by as we sit today. They're much more widely available. The support's going to be wider as a result. The build quality is infinitely better because it's a reputable company making tens of millions of these things. In 5 years' time, you're not going to be able to get your hands on a Vita, much less a PSP whose battery hasn't been a Violet Beauregarde ballooned. So in 5 years' time, they are going to be your only option. And so you'd better hope that the build quality gets better. And to be fair, some of them do look really compelling for the hardware in them. And hey, in 5 years' time, like modern phones can emulate PS2. Yeah. That's the thing that I haven't dabbled with it on my phone, but my phone's chipset conceivably could run PS2 games. So in a couple of years, that tech's bound to filter in. And if you can imagine playing, God Hand or Vice City or Eco or one of those. I mean, I hate Eco, but like I'm reaching for the classics. Like one of those big games, like you say, curled up on your couch to have that experience that way, without having to faff around with streaming from a computer or one of the other more convoluted ways of doing it. That is really compelling, and I suppose that what then becomes super interesting is, do people want to play handheld to relive their old games, or do they want to play handheld to get like new experiences that are maybe a little bit below what they might get from a console release, but because it's a smaller budget, they're often much more willing to experiment.
Yes, I think it's kind of both. You know what I will say?
Probably.
I think in a number of years, the Switch Lite is going to turn into the homebrew and emulation master. It's going to become very fun. Do you want to give any last words on this topic, Paula?
My overall opinion, with the dedicated handheld is that it is fading out, but concepts like the Switch are here to stay. I think all these knockoffs that Chinese little handhelds, as you said, they're getting better and better because a couple of YouTubers that I follow, one of them is, maybe Vita Maps, always buys weird stuff. He just tested out a number of knockoff handhelds. Some of them have horrible audio and stuff like that, but there was a particular one that it seems to be pretty good in in general. So, at the very least, kind of glad that they are leaving like the PS Vita like phase behind. Because they used to make like a lot of PSP or Vita like, and that kind of made it a little bit of a pain to actually get a PS Vita here like on the second-hand market, but that's another story from the time.
Oh, I see.
It's not going to get any easier either.
Yeah, because like they advertise it like under the PSP or PS Vita name, but you look at the picture, it's like that is not a thing. That is not the thing I want to buy,
it's
sir.
Oh, jeez, yeah. I never thought about
my
that.
favourite's the I'm sure you've both seen it. The one where it's like a Vita shape, but either side is red and blue, as though they were switched Joy-Cons. But obviously they don't separate, and it's just like a really, really crummy chipset on the inside, and it like plays 3 NES ROMs.
Yeah, they make like really, really, really weird stuff. But I don't think like we're gonna be in a time that there's not, at the very least, like some kind of Switch model or something that you can take on the go somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like from Nintendo, because like Nintendo being a Japanese company, they're capitalizing like on the like Japanese style. In the sense that in Japan, a lot of people just play like portable.
Yeah.
And I feel Nintendo is like tackling that market in particular because like mobile phones, yeah, they can play games and stuff, but there are either people that don't want to have a super expensive mobile phone, or on the other side, there's people like me who just can't get used to playing on a mobile device without like actual buttons to press. Because like, there's something weird about about playing like only with a touch screen, in my opinion.
I agree. Thank you, Paul. Well, there you have it, folks. There's our take on the death of dedicated handhelds and the rise of the Switch and the existence and continuation of handhelds forever.
That's more like it.
See, there you go. But I agree with you all. So why don't we move on to our question? We'll go through this pretty quick here. From, darn it, I have to say the name of a forum user out loud again. Juvej?
Uber.
Juvej? Oh, nice.
Uber.
I need you to say
Uber.
Uber. Excellent. And they ask, how do you organize your physical and digital libraries?
I'm super quick. Digitally, I just straight up don't. Physically, it's by platform and then alphabetically. There you go.
What about you, Paula?
I am gonna go like a little bit like in depth with this one because kind of a maniac when it comes with organizing stuff like this. So on the digital side, like on Steam, just like I separate the games like in categories. Like okay, those are puzzles, those are visual novels, stuff like that. On the physical side, oh my god. Because like I have like shelves arranged like by I have like my PlayStation stuff where I have like the Vita, PS4, PSP, or they're alphabetically. Then I have the DS and 3DS stuff, and I pretty much put together whatever feels right. Then we have the Wii U, Wii, and Switch stuff, and then I go alphabetically again. And then there's the special shelf where I put like everything Otome.
Nice.
And I have a separate space only for Code Realize.
Wow, that's awesome. Just your own Code Realize section.
Yeah, because I like the little collectibles that come with some of the special editions, and also because I have more copies of that game that I should. I have all the physical releases.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's how I organize my library.
Nice. I'm a little bit like Rick. Like my digital organization is just terrible. Although I have noticed I like the my Vita was my favorite actually. I organized my Vita's digital games beautifully. They had those little bubbles. They were so great. I could like label them all. I loved that. Then you've got like the 3DS, which is a nightmare. It's just like all these blocks all over the place, and I'm just like games. And like my PS4 too is a nightmare. And like my I have to say I do very much enjoy the Series X's way that their games are displayed, because they'll tell you like what's a Game Pass game and what's not and stuff, and so their little title cards are like really they're really nice, and they'll say like what's optimized and what isn't, and so I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, in general, when it comes to digital, it's just a free for all, and I tend to use How Long to Beat actually.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, right, for the site. I tend to use that to actually organize my digital games. So like I have my backlog, which is games I intend to play, and those are mostly all like actually owned games and mostly physical, some digital. And then I also have like a digital list, which is just like the list of all of these games, emulation, maybe bought ones that are just kind of there, and it's like sort of a backlog, but more of like a I don't know, let's try this game today kind of thing. And a Game Pass section. So like I do that there. Physically, I'm alphabetical all the way. I love that.
Gotta be.
That's for my console games. I will admit, for my like DS games and 3DS games, all the cases are like stored, and I just have them in a carrying case because I find that is just a bit easier. And so they're all slotted into like those little pouches that I can look at them. And then also
the collector is screaming.
The collector news screaming. Yeah, but my cases are all they're all like really stored nicely and safely. So that I prefer, because then my cases don't get dinged.
Okay.
Right? I'm not one of those monsters who throws out the case. I don't know who does that. Rick's like, maybe.
Yeah, I kid. I would never. I would never.
But anyway,
you sure?
Yeah, that's me. They're on a shelf too, but I have like over 100 360 games that are in storage right now but they're back in New Brunswick, which is like my home province, and I'm not there anymore. So I want to get them eventually now that I have a Series X and start playing again. But yeah, that's me. That's me. Shall we move on to everyone's favorite game?
Speaking of How Long to Beat.
How Long to Beat. I think it's my turn, right, to do the little fun time. So get ready, everybody. And this is great. Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch.
Oh shit!
That's the first one, right?
That's the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That is the first one. What do we think? Who's got one? I have no idea.
I'm trying to think because I actually played a little bit of the game.
I've beaten this game. I love this game, and I have no idea.
I remember looking up the times, but I don't remember the times now.
I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna say 27 hours for main. I'm gonna say 31 for main plus. And I'm gonna say something like 55 for completionist.
Okay.
I think I'm on the low end, to be honest, but that's what I'm comfortable with, because I do think this one is a little shorter than the second one, I think. But God, it's hard to remember.
What about you, Paula? What you saying?
I'm trying to remember, because I remember looking like at the menus and stuff as I was playing, and there are like a lot of stuff like unlockables. So I'm not sure I'm confident enough to do a 100% guess. But for the main story, I'm gonna stick with, I think 28 hours for the main story. No, 30. 30 for the main story.
Okay.
37 for main plus. And 60 for 100%.
60, okay.
I am sure somewhere there I have all the times wrong.
Quite possibly, right. I'm going to be slightly more reserved. So I'm going to say main 28 hours. I'm going to say main plus 42 hours, because I think that's going to be a bit more flexy. And I'm just going to skip 100% because I would just be firing completely blind.
I know. I
So-
honestly went for the 100 just so I could get that 5-hour thing. That's my bet. All right,
I
are you
thought
ready?
about it.
Are you
Yeah.
ready?
Paula,
Can I change my main
Oh.
plus to 35? I feel more confident in 35.
35, okay.
Okay.
Feeling like you shot it a little bit short
I
based on
think
everybody
so.
else.
Yeah. All right. Next.
So without further ado,
Here we
go
go.
on, click that button, Alex.
All right, she loading. Here we go. Oh my lord. We have main story, 45 hours.
Oh!
Oh!
Yeah. Main plus extras, 56 and a half hours.
Okay.
Completionist, 92 and a half hours.
Oh, we were
Ah!
very short.
We were
I
all
should've
Very
been-
short.
horribly wrong.
Because I was about to say something like that, but when you said, "Oh, I played it," and started like shooting super low, I was like, "Okay, I'm not so confident."
I fooled you
anymore."
all.
It's your fault she got it wrong, basically.
Yeah,
Alex.
it's all
on
my
you.
fault. Darn it. Well,
No.
another week, another failure for us all. But thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again next week.
On
So
that
long.
depressing note, until then.
Until then,
See you later.
bye.